Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is where we talk about the books. And thank you for listening. And spread the word. Get hold of the books if you want to. I want to talk about a book called Terrorist Takedown, which was written under my own name back in 2016 around. And it's an interesting story how this book came to being. By that time, I had quite a fan following on the police, Mean Streets books. And the people who like the Mean Streets books really, really like them. And those who dislike them really, really dislike them. It's like that with all my books, to be honest. Simply because I think I'm a bit too straightforward. I say things as it is. I don't play the political correctness card at all. And sometimes what I say in the books and even here on the show is rather shocking. And it's sometimes a bit in your face. So anyway, my contact details are in all the books, and if a reader responds and asks me questions or anything like that, I will always come back to the guy as long as it's reasonable, and quite often we become friends, and even when we disagree at times, it's still not the end of the world. It seems to me these days it's not like that. These days you either agree or you're gone. But that's not the way it should be. You should be able to disagree respectfully with each other and then let it go. We're not females and we're not in the middle of a divorce. By which I mean, I've seen so many divorces in my legal career. It's bread and butter money. And when she walks in there or he walks in there with his new little thing he wants to marry, he's now like 47 years old and I wants to marry something which is 29. Hey. The stupid things men do when their trousers go down is amazing. But then they're very entitled, especially when you have, or you have a woman coming in and now she's got a new protector there, a sugar daddy. And then she's like, yeah, I'm not involved here, but I want to see justice. Actually, what you should do is you pick up the phone once they leave and they call your position attorney, says, hey, mate, remember that X5 BMW you wanted? Yeah, of course. Yeah, go and buy it, mate. We're going to make so much money out of these two. Of course, we don't really do that. Of course not. Of course not. But people can be very unreasonable. That's what I'm trying to say here. And when you're an author, you're really, really subjected to a lot of criticism. You make a spelling mistake somewhere, or they think you did, and then it's just all over you. And the sarcastic comments, and it's really, I would say to people, if that type of thing is going to bother you, then please don't even write a book and never publish it, because you have to learn to live with that, and it's not easy. It's not easy. I saw as a child, we attended a book review somewhere, and the author actually chased the reviewer of a local newspaper down the street to moor him. But sadly, the police sergeant were chasing behind the two of them and then stopped the fight before it could get really interesting. So I don't even read reviews, to be honest. My opinion is if people want to talk to me, you have my contact details, you can do so. And if you're insulting or you find my writing so bad that you don't want to read them, then I don't care. The lucky thing for me is I don't live for the money I make out of the books. In fact, it's so little it makes no real difference. It's not going to bother me at all. Terrorist Takedown had problems from the beginning because I think it was Facebook who refused to accept the name. I still had an account on Facebook then. I actually call the place F-Book. And I don't know why anybody in the world actually wants to be on Facebook, but anyway. So they just slammed me for hate speech and things because that book's name is Terrorist Takedown. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny, these censors, these social media companies, they're all fascists, by the way. It's fascism. I explained it to you in many videos where state and big corporates take hand, and the corporates then start doing what the state are not allowed to do by law. That is suppression of free speech, mostly, and only bringing out the version which the state wants to be out. Then there you go. That's fascism. Classic definition, see oath of evil, the war on Protestantism, where I spent many, many pages describing to you what's fascism, where it comes from. Rome, by the way. Yeah, it's a preferred system according to the Catholic Church. It's a system they want, and that's a system they had during the Middle Ages. And that is the system which is now making a rapid comeback. But if you want to know more, read that book, look at my video, see what you can do. Anyway, this book, Terrorist Takedown, it came from a reader of the Mean Streets Police books, and he contacted me, and he's a great guy, he really reached out, called Jim Willard, who is from West Virginia. And Jim then told me the story of his son, who was Detective Donald Miller, and he was at the police department in North Carolina, New Bern, that is the place called. And apparently, as I understand the story, his wife was giving birth in a hospital. He was there, he was off duty. He walked in and he noted a suspicious character who, by all accounts, were going to commit mass murder, one of these attacks, these mass shooting incidents, and he intervened. And he stopped the attack before it started, but he got killed in the process. May he rest in peace. I believe that was in 2001, Christmas Day. And Jim then asked me the question. He said to me, look, do you think that if an armed civilian is around who's a bit trained, and he sees the terrorist is going to explode the bomb or going to start knifing people or attacking people, and he shoots him, do you think you can actually stop a terrorist attack like that? Well, the answer is yes, of course, obviously. The legal consequences of that is something else, especially in these days we live, because if you shoot somebody who doesn't look like you, then you're automatically a racist, or you're homophobic, or you are whatever phobia you have, they will get you. They will get you. So I have to say, right in the beginning, as I say in the book, I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm not advising you in anything. I'm just telling you what to do and what to look around for. But what you do with the information you receive is your problem and not mine. Because you have to. I mean, it is just insane. It's insane what's happening in the world these days with this woke crap, which is actually part of a Hegelian dialectic. You should read codename GSSP 40, which I wrote under the other name, codename, GSSP 40, also Oath of Evil, of course, will have it in, where we explain a Hegelian dialectic to you, and then you'll understand what's happening in the world. It will start making sense, and you'll see the biblical prophecies coming out. Anyway, did this happen before, that somebody stopped an attack? In South Africa, in 1993, on July the 25th, in Cape Town, there happened to be some terrorists, 4 of them. I think they were APLA members. They might still even be in jail, I don't know. And they walked into St. James Church in Cape Town, and they started throwing hand grenades, and they opened up with assault rifles. This is in God's church, would you believe? And they killed 11, and they wounded another 58. I remember there was a Russian sailor or something amongst the wounded. It was a terrible slaughter. It was just before Mr. Mandela took over. Mr. Mandela was released for 3 years by then. Why these people did that, only they will know. Because really, it is like totally unnecessary. There was no bloody need to do that. The war was over. And yet they did that. And 11 people died, and of course a lot of lives were ruined, including their own. And so what makes this interesting from this viewpoint is that one of the church members were actually armed. I think he was a former Rhodesian soldier. I'm not sure, but I think he was. And he had a 38 special revolver with him inside church. Now, for your foreigners here, that is not that uncommon in South Africa. The place is, since Mr. Mandela left, it just went downhill all the way. In the army, you still find good units, special forces, parabats, paratroopers. Here and there you find bright people still. But in general, the place is a mess. As I always say to you, if you're in South Africa and you're listening here, take Donald Trump's offer. It's not meant sincerely at all. It's got nothing to do with land appropriation or anything like that. This is revenge from Israel. This is a revenge because of a court case against Netanyahu and the rest, which they actually won in terms of genocide. This is the revenge. So what they're trying to do is to remove all the white people out, then the country will completely collapse. And of course, there'll be people who say, oh, you're racist. No, I'm not. I'm not racist. I'm not the one who went on and on with affirmative action for the last bloody 50 years, achieving absolutely nothing, failing every citizen. Go and read where I talk about safety net, which is about crime in South Africa, and go and see how you failed your country. Now, most of these criminals who are conducting these violent crimes are actually born after the changes. So why is that? Logical reason is they went that route. Why? Because they can't find a decent job. Because a job, for people to find a job is virtually impossible if you don't know somebody. It has just crashed. Millions of jobs has been lost. The borders have been opened for people to stream in to take whatever jobs are left, the lower paying ones. And if you're white or if you're not female, your chances of getting a decent job up to a certain level is zero. Zero. You won't get it. So it's that simple. And it doesn't help that the so-called opposition party, and I'm speaking frankly now, is in cahoots and in bed, and they got bought basically by the ruling government. It's a country which is not worth investing. I mean, we looked at it, Rebecca and myself, and we thought, okay, let's get a place that's close to Kruger National Park, do the Airbnb thing, or when she saw Cape Town, of course, I think we have to get a place in Cape Town. And then we looked at it and we thought, nah, we'll not invest there. Sorry. Unless you get your damn act sorted out, we're not investing there. But anyway, there was no reason for this attack at the St. James Church. There was another one at a golf club in King Williamstown, place where I actually worked as a policeman. And if you read Mean Streets Free, the jokes, the laughs, you will find that I was sort of compromised there at that golf court one night. I didn't know she was married, and just when we got like, I don't know, what do you call the Americans call it, second base, there were no actual public indecency, but the husband arrived and he started shooting. I had to run away. And man, I ran. Today we can laugh about it, but that day it was not funny because I was... Anyway, it doesn't matter. Read the book. Not even saying it was me. I said it could have been me. I just say that. Anyway, so this happened before. And so it's not impossible that you walk around and you walk into such a situation, especially in in Western Europe. Western Europe today is a hellhole. I mean, I lived in Switzerland as, Swineland for 3 years. And I think I explained many times what I think of their little summer camp, which is their army, I say. And my contempt for the police are even more. And the intelligence services is... I don't have contempt because they're not worthy of contempt even. They are that pathetic. I mean, that country is so open for an attack that any jihadi who wants to go and kill them, they can go. It is open. They'll get away with it. Then every one of you will say to me, oh, but they're so armed. Oh, every man has an assault rifle at home. They don't have ammo. Do you know that? They don't have ammo. Since the Cold War, they stopped that. They don't have ammo. First place. Second place, I've seen them. The military men, if you're listening to me now, you look at men differently, right? You admit it. When you see a man in military uniform, you look at him in a certain way. You see if there's parachute wings on his chest. You see if he's fit and in shape. You see if he looks parat, if he looks like he can actually fight, if he has fire in him. You look at him, you summarize him in a very different way than you would do with a tucker or a long-haired liberal. Or you just dismiss, I mean, what the hell. I would sit there hogging trees and things like that. He's not a fighter, man. Swine is not, they're not fighters. They're scared. They play these games and they consider themselves to be this wonderful nation. absolute wonderful people, and they got this finest army with, yeah, oh, shame. No, I'm not impressed with them. I'm not impressed with their police. And if they ever have a huge terrorist problem, I believe they got some kind of a treaty with France to come in and assist them, because France can do it. France can deal with terrorism. Swine, oh, please. But anyway, they also have laws, which are very interesting because they're anti-church and they're anti-Christian. All of their laws. Yeah, it's funny, strange. Yeah, one of these countries will follow the blue laws, in other words, the Sunday laws. You know why they do that? Because they're bowing down to Rome. Sunday worships, mark of the beast, read Oath of Evil. I've explained it there to you. Go and look at Professor Walter Weiff. Find his series, many others. We will explain to you what is the mark of the beast. Comes down to Sunday worship. Why? Because the Catholic Church, and that's not against Catholics, it's against the system. Because they say that it is a mark of authority. They moved that day away from the Sabbath day, which is not from the Jews. It comes from Genesis, long before the Jews were there, 600 years. Yeah, right at the creation. And they moved the day away. When God says, remember my Sabbath day, the fourth commandment, keep it holy. You know it. No, we move it to Sunday. No, we don't care. No. No. We don't care about God's commandments. No. It stopped at the cross, it's not there anymore. No. What a stupid argument. I mean, the Ten Commandments will never go away. What was nailed to the cross is a ceremonial law. In other words, you don't have to be circumcised. You don't have to. You want to confess your sins to God, you can do it to God, not a damn priest. The Catholic Church says the priest is so high that if he forgives your sins, the Catholic priest, if he forgives you your sin, God has to listen. Is that not blasphemous? It is utter blasphemy. It is ridiculous. The Bible says confess your faults to each other. And then they came and they changed the Bibles. And they made it confess your sins. Yeah, let me not go on that route. Let's get back to the book. I can see I'm going to get sidetracked today. I'm sure a lot of you will be quite annoyed and just walk out. Yeah, that's also all right. But there will be a lot of you also who will say, no, fine, that is course. That's the way his mind works. It's actually important, guys. It's important that when I get your attention somehow, that I also bring out these other things, because it will have an effect on your life. There's simple truths which are happening in the world today, and these terrorist attacks are a direct result of the USA, was the second piece, was meddling and attacking other countries without reasons and on false intelligence. We all know it. And the results of that is not that they kick their ass, get it kicked, and they do, and they run away in disgrace. We know that too, blah, blah, blah. But the result of that is that Christians right across that area where they cause their shit is murdered. That also comes out in the book. That's what's behind it. There's always something behind things. Nothing just happens in the world. So these terrorist attacks, you have to understand, they might not be brand new, but there are good reasons why they are happening. And they are being supported too. The terrorists are supported by the US and NATO. Yes, look what happened in Syria now. Definitely, now Al-Qaeda is in charge of Syria. Israel is very happy. Because why Syria now as a conventional power is gone? Yeah, but it's going to explode into a civil war. We hope not, but it is. And then that is going to spill over to Israel. It's a home goal, man. It's a home goal. But anyway, whatever. As I said to you, the story with Trump trying to remove the farmers and the white people out of South Africa, and I say again, go, get out. Especially if you're Jewish, get the hell out of the country. You're not safe. But don't think it's because they like you. It's got nothing to do with it. There's other things behind it. So anyway, after I spoke to Jim Willett, I decided, let's write this book. Let's see if we can assist in some way. It's not a very long book. It's about 200 pages. Lots of pictures in it as well. The first subject we covered was just awareness, to be able to see what's happening around you. which is the basics, because you can see it. A terrorist normally, they very well trained if they act in a group, but if it's a lone man, he's normally not that well trained. He might have seen a few movies, he might have seen some training here on the dark web, and they might have read a few books, but he's still fairly unsure of himself. But it did happen, of course, that some of them left the US or Europe and they go for training somewhere and they come back. That's possible as well, but it's quite a frightful thing to do, a terrorist act, if you think about it, because the chances of you dying or you ending up in jail for the rest of your life is virtually assured. It is a life-changing event. So some of them might actually go there, they look around, they're trying to gather the guts to do it before they strike, or they look nervous, they would be sweating. But anyway, you can spot him. You can spot that there's something wrong with him. There's not always a him. I always also say to you, there is a saying that it's the tamest dog who bites the worst. It might be a female, very much possible. Even children, they even use children now as to explode bombs or things. There might be more than one. So you have to be aware. You have to be on the lookout and see for anything suspicious. And if you see something suspicious, then of course, what do you do? But we deal with that. Then in chapter 2, we look at types of firearms. We looked at suppressors, silencers, all those type of things. That's the basics to get you through. Then we look at the caliber, what type of caliber is the best. We think maintenance, gun safety, things like that. Caliber is very interesting. I actually shocked him. I said to him, my preferred caliber is actually not a 9mm Parabellum. I prefer the 9mm short. Why? Because it's a smaller pistol. It's easier to hide. You still have superb striking power if you load expanding bullets, the dum-dums, so to speak. These things are, of course, designed to kill human beings. We're not interested now, like I was in the police, to shoot a car out or anything like that. Yeah, I'm interested in killing. And because as a civilian, you are not under the Geneva Conventions, you can use such ammunition. You just have to be sure that they actually work. So you have to test them. And I don't mean to go and do what the US Special Forces do, where you would shoot a sheep or something which is standing there, and then they would treat it to obtain their medical skills. Barbaric, man. Flippin' barbaric. It's amazing. Why don't you go to your ER units, you idiots, like the South Africans do? Why do you need to go and shoot a poor sheep or an animal just so that you can test your skills? And you're an idiot. It's the same like this in Fauci we trust, instead of Jesus. That fellow. Yeah, that Jesuit, by the way, Jesuit. Yeah, strange. Yeah. Have we not found out about those experiments they're doing on dogs and animals and things like that without flipping reason? Huh? Anyway, whatever. I know that the US medical schools as well, they use pigs to operate on and so forth because they're quite close to humans in flesh. Again, I don't get it. I really don't get it. There are other ways to do it. You don't need to hurt animals to do this. You know what? Perhaps I am a bit of a hippie myself, but I just don't get it. Can't stand it when animals gets abused. Yeah, so 380 ACP is also what they call a 9mm short, the right ammo. Yeah, it will work. I carried one for many years. I had a laser dot sight on it. It was a CZ 83, I believe. Not a Gucci firearm at all, but he did what he had to do. It's also always interesting to me when you find murder weapons. You don't really find these Gucci type of things. They use like whatever they have. So the big problem is actually to shoot what you aim for. So we also look at that in the next chapter. We look at double tapping, where that comes from. Most of the US people don't even know what that is. Amazing. Because to me, double tapping is absolutely everything. You either know how to double tap, and that's a method you use to shoot, or you don't. There's no place for automatic gunfire in counterterrorism operations. Note I said counterterrorism. I didn't say counter-insurgency. That's something else. You're completely differently armed, and you have a different mindset, and you operate in a different environment. This is the ultimate. because now you're operating in, say, a mall. There's lots of innocents there, and it's not the bush. It's not bush warfare at all. You need to be trained for that, and it is actually the territory of special forces, to be honest. And you can do good. Let there be no doubt. If you can identify the terrorists, and that's the sad thing, we're going to get to that too, is they get it identified most of the time, and the authorities just do nothing. Nothing. But we're going to get to that. Anyway, double tapping is something which started in the Second World War. I traced it back to the Special Operations Executive. That is Churchill. Churchill's saboteurs, the ones who jumped into occupied France, and they would then conduct sabotage operations. There were one group who actually destroyed a couple of 100 trains. Yeah, they destroyed more trains than the entire tactical air forces of Allies. Yeah. Interesting that. Yeah. And also, of course, we're doing espionage work and things like that. But that's where it comes from, because they were also using these 3.8 revolvers and whatever they had. And they realized they just couldn't kill the bastard quickly enough. So they learned to shoot very quickly, double. Like, you pull the trigger actually twice. And then what happens is the guy goes down. And he stays down, and you make sure he's dead, actually. So that's where that comes from. And then came the Munich massacres of the Olympic Games, where the Germans had absolutely no clue what they were doing. Nothing. They had no trained forces available. And the ones who were supposed to be involved, who were snipers afterwards, said they were so scared. Again, they were not trained to do this. They were totally. The special forces then changed to become counter-terrorism forces as well. The British SAS then remembered what happened with SOE, and they started introducing the problem I have with military special forces units is many of them use standard ammunition, which is not good enough. In this type of game, you need something which is going to break up in the body. But if you look what people like Andre Willeke said, our chaplain, the former South African Railway Police Special Task Force people, they talk a bit of the type of bullets they were using and how they were specially designed to break up. It is a fine line. I remember one of them telling me actually that they shot a hijacker in the head and the bullet just knocked him out. He didn't penetrate his skull because he broke up. And so, so they could arrest him in peace, threw him out of the aircraft and arrest him. That's not what you want, actually. You want him dead, especially these days, because the problem here is he might be wearing explosives or things, and you don't want him to detonate the explosive, so you have to get an instant kill. The reason for that is that, again, they out to kill. That's the difference between a criminal and a terrorist. A terrorist wants to kill you. He has no desire to speak to you, be friendly to you, steal your stuff, slap you around. Yeah, he'll do all those things too, but in effect, the more he kills, the better. The sad thing is it will be in the news for 3 days. 3 days. And people forgot about it. That's simple. We're so used to it. Anyway, we also look at aiming devices, because Jim sent me a picture. Now, there's a SWAT team in the US. All the police departments have SWAT teams. They are not special forces rated. In fact, they are very lowly rated. They are totally overused. When they started off in the entire US, they would be used about 50 times a year in the entire US. They are now used hundreds of times every day. So what happens is you've got policemen, yes, they're fairly fit. They have some skills, not a lot, some skills. Now they're being used to justify their existence. They execute warrants of arrest, that type of thing. Quite often they hit the wrong house. Then they storm in. Then the dog tries to bite it. Then they kill the dog. Then the owner arrives with his own handgun. Then a shootout between them and him. It's just ridiculous. Very pathetic. I don't want to be in the US ever in my life. I don't trust their police departments. I think they are totally over the top. And as you've seen, I've put out some statistics in another book, Safety Net. You will see the chances of getting away of killing you is virtually 100%. It's fantastic with the statistics. They really have It's extremely seldom that one of them actually gets even arrested. It's even more seldom that one of them actually go to jail. They lose cannons. It comes down to that, and you can see it in their attitude, and you can see the way they act. But I suppose there are good ones amongst them too. It's possible. But the statistics are totally against them. Yeah, perhaps I'm a bit more of a talker and a liberal in what I think. But anyway, the other thing is also which you need to get away from is the idea that a terrorist is insane. He's not insane. There's nothing insane about him. Some of them might be, but mostly they are people who are dedicated and they are people who can actually plan. They can follow orders. That's very important. And many of them are trained. Not all of them are not trained well, but they are trained. So you deal with an animal here. You deal with something else. Anyway, the aiming devices, Jim, yeah, he sent me this picture of a SWAT team, and they had the aiming devices, dot sights, actually put it the wrong way around on his assault weapon. Yeah, he had a lot to say about that. Look, guys, it's also a matter of going to a range. If you want to be proficient with your firearm, you need to practice. And you really need to practice. And it's not a matter of standing there talking nonsense to your mate, and you take a few pot shots, and then you take a sip of a beer, and then you go back to your braai area. No. This is dedication. You really need to shoot. You really need to do this properly. It's for your own good, and you need to know when to shoot and when to stop shooting. Stop shooting is actually the damn problem here. Because if you've been in any type of shooting incident, you will know it is hard to get them in to stop shooting. Especially in the police, where it's not in the border, it's not in the field, it's not counterinsurgency. You cannot just keep shooting. You have to sometimes kick a guy in the ribs to say, hey, stop shooting. Because people they get into the moment. I mean, and they just get there. They just empty that magazine. And of course, I hate it when people shoot on automatic. I just can't stand it unless it's in the first few seconds of a contact. And you need to bring the firepower on specific circumstances. But in counterterrorism, you don't do that. It's fascinating with Israelis, Mossad, when they execute people, it's murder, when they assassinate people. We're the country actually with the most state-approved assassinations in the world, more than 3,000. And what did it help them? Absolutely nothing. It just created more terrorism. That's why I laugh about it. I think it's ridiculous. It's not working, but still you're carrying on. And they would, of course, walk right up to the person, first to identify him, secondly to make him understand he's going to die. And then they just empty a .22 caliber into him. That used to be their trademark, And don't underestimate a .22. I write about it in one of the books, actually. I had a lot to say about .22. I looked at it completely, how it works, how it's where it comes from. Very good caliber actually to kill people. In fact, that and the 9mm Parabellum is the two calibers used most to kill people. With terrorism, of course, depending where you are. In the US, it's probably the M4, the civilian models of them. It's not a good rifle at all. But that's what's mostly used to kill in terrorism, because people can get hold of them. And then, of course, in the rest of the world is the AK-47, which is a fantastic rifle, depending which model. You speak to the Special Forces people, they say to you, look, we don't want the one with a fold-up butt because it's not accurate enough. It flickers around a bit when you shoot with it. They need a solid wooden butt on it, or not wood, that plastic, whatever thing they call it. But they want a solid one. They don't want AKM, which just fold up. They don't want that. They are interesting, fantastic weapons. But anyway, so then we also have a chapter on hostage survival. I've made an entire series on that because it might be that you are captured and how you've been kept. Lots of things you can do to survive. Lots of things you can do to communicate. There's a lot of things. There's really a lot of things. You have to go through that entire series. It's about 8 hours long. Not a lot of people watched it. I don't care. I know what to do. Is it insane to think that you might be taken hostage? No, not at all. You might be at a place and then some nutcase come in here, let's say a bank or in an office somewhere, walks in, takes everybody hostage. Yeah, that happens. It might be that your ex-husband or whatever arrives and now they're angry about the child support or whatever, so they take hostages. Yeah. But most of all, what happens is you get hijacked in your car, then you're hostage. You might also wake up and the intruders and armed robbers are right inside your house. Yeah, that's also a hostage situation. You see, it doesn't need to go on for months and years. And it doesn't even need to, because the FBI statistics will tell you that within 3 days, something like 29%, let's say 1 out of 3, 27 to 29% of people will then start suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. So you need to know what that is, but we dedicated the entire episode on it. And then chapter 6, we talk about taking the bastard down. In other words, you're on a shooting, there's now something happened and now you need to make a decision and you need to kill him. It's actually a very simple formula. You just need to take him down. That's it. And if I say take him down, I mean take him down. It's not a question of drop your weapon or whatever. But again, I'm not giving you advice. I'm just saying you need to enter it before it becomes worse. And then we look at chapter 7 at the crime scene and working with explosives. So there's a lot of pictures and things of explosives in the book, because some of them use pipe bombs and everything. So you need to know what it looks like. You need to know what to do with it. And I don't mean go and try and disarm it, because unless you're trained, don't do it. Then don't be stupid. Just stay away from it. Keep people away from it. Identify it. Give it to the police. Take pictures of it if you can, but don't walk up to it to take pictures either. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things which we say in the book which is practical and experience-based. But again, don't sue me if something goes wrong with you. I don't know if that thing's going to explode or not. I remember an incident. It is one of the Mean Streets books, Mean Streets 2. Now, in 1983, I think there was something bad which happened in South Africa. The new members of parliament today, terrorists of those days, they planted a bomb. I think it was a car bomb right of the South African Air Force headquarters in Pretoria, and they exploded it, and a lot of people died. In fact, our chaplain, Andre Willifier, and the mate, they were in that building. They walked out of there, and I think 10 minutes later the bomb went off. There's other people who got blinded for life. There's others who lost parents. It was just horrible. And of course, it wasn't an attack on a civilian target. But a lot of civilians died because, it's the middle of a city. People were walking around there. But they don't care. What do they care? So anyway, so during the years to follow, the guards and things were actually quite aware of this incident, and they would look around for suspicious parcels. And so we got a call one night. I was still in the flying squad in Pretoria towards, and we got a call to come out to the SAF headquarters because I found a suspicious parcel. Now, how it worked in the police is your flying squad units would go there first, because we got the fast cars and we've got the time and the attitude. And so we would get there within minutes. We were there. And sure as hell, there's like a big Mercedes standing there, Mercedes car. Well, a really big one, 420 SE, top range. And he's standing there, and inside in the back on the seat on the lights, it's a pipe. And it really looked like a pipe bomb, It's got all the things on it. No wires or anything sticking out. That bothered me, but if you can't really see what's below it. But it looked suspicious, and so I thanked the guard, the national serviceman who called us. And there I saw, I saw actually some officers of the Air Force then berating this guy because he, why did he call the police, things like that. I said to him, sir, stop this, and did very well. I must say the people who were doing the berating were not pilots or air crew, which we greatly admire. And so we called the bomb explosive, the bomb squad, and then they arrived, very well trained people. And we've dealt with bombs before. I think at Sterland, when that bomb exploded, I was there also. And there I see a lot of bravery. You see the police dog unit members, they just get the explosives dogs, walk in, start searching for more bombs. It's like that. While the rest of us would move people out, also moving in. It actually takes a lot of bravery to do that, to be honest. And then you also don't have a terrorist is still there and going to start shooting. In fact, you want him to start shooting because then you can identify and kill him. But when you see these explosives people, they're really good. They would just walk up and they would disarm that bomb. Now, Andre Willifeer, once again, our chaplain, he actually disarmed quite a few bombs like that in East London. I think there was one at the Papa Jello, which was quite a nice restaurant. They had nice T-bones there and things, man, right on the beach. That got blew up by a limpet mine, but they found another limpet mine, and I think it was Andre. I think on a correction, we actually disarmed that thing. Your problem is when they booby trap it, it looks like you can disarm it quickly, but you can't. There might be something more going on. Very interesting, these people. Anyway, so they walked up and now they're wondering what to do because they can't get into the car. So we traced the car's owner to a farm in the Free State. And where's he? No, he's in Pretoria somewhere. Okay, well, here's his car. So right, now we know it's probably not a bomb. Why? Because the car's not stolen. If a car is stolen, then we would have dealt with it totally different. So anyway, we're just about to break a window when this fruit, a very big Free State farmer arrives. There in his late 40s, 50s perhaps, early 50s, big guy. You know these Free State farmers, man. They eat meat for a living, very big people. Not fat, just this big. So he arrives and he's like, yeah, guys, what's going on? I said, no, is this your car? He said, yes. I said, what the hell is this bomb here at the back? And he's like, no, there's no bomb. I'm a member of the commandos. I'm actually an officer there. I've done my military service. No, guys, no, it's not a bomb. I'll show you what it is. So he opened it and we found out this, how can I put this now? Bull sperm. Yeah. Like cattle sperm to impregnate, I suppose a cow. Yeah, no, he got this stot bull or something, and then he got the sperm inside this pipe, and that's how they transport it around. It's not a pipe, it's like a mini fridge almost. Yeah, that's what happened. So we escaped the thing, man. We were lucky that day. And the Wim also had a whole bunch of biltong there at the back of his car, and he gave that to everybody. Even for me, I was eating meat in those days. And the guy who called us, we made sure that he got a few kilos as well, because you know what, he did the right thing. And then that's the point why I tell you the story is because if you see a suspicious parcel, please report it. Don't go and kick it. That happened too. We got called out once to Voortrekker Hoogte. They found a parcel and the explosives dogs lay down next to it, which means there's something inside it. So we arrived first, and the police bomb squad people arrived. And now we're looking at this thing, and they're also standing there. And I would say there was a bit of a problem between the police and the army in those days. Yeah. It's pretty cool, it's not a big deal. I just read the other day on Legacy Conversations, we had our episode out on South African police counterinsurgency, and there was an officer, almost certainly from the Armor Corps, writing there, and he was quite snotty about SAP. He made comments like, yeah, I haven't seen you man a G5 or a Ratel or anything. It wasn't our job to do that. If we wanted to do it, sure as hell we could have done it. And but there were a lot of army officers, I'm sad to say, we had a problem with the police, especially with Kufut units, especially with counterinsurgency. In fact, we were effective. Yeah. And also we knew more than you. We were fighting long before you. Yeah. From 1966, I think. We were already in Rhodesia fighting. Yeah. Of course, we never had the manpower or the money to carry on, and that's a pity. There are people who say, I know my mate of 32 Battalion, Kevin Johnson, is one of them, who said we should have actually called our people to the police and then, make it police operations instead of army operations. But, there's arguments on both sides. But anyway, there was a feeling there which was one of the reasons I was so reluctant actually to start the Legacy Conversation channel, the one where we speak to military veterans, because I really thought that my police background will be held against me. But it wasn't. I think we've outgrown that nonsense now. And I have great admiration for the army, I can tell you. I think we're magnificent, man. Great people. And whenever the army arrived, we were very grateful to see them because they had the firepower, which we didn't have. Very grateful to them. Highly trained people, motivated, great. Air Force too, all of them. Die military, no problem with them. Anyway, we were standing at Voortrekkerhoogte and there's this box and their dogs lying down. Now the police, explosives dogs come, they don't lie down. In fact, one lifted his leg and peed on it. Okay, so now what? So the army guys wants to call the bomb disposal officers. We say there's no need. Just open the damn thing. And so a bit of argument ensues. And I just say, look, guys, this is stupid. If our dogs don't lie down, there is nothing in it. Our dogs are better trained than yours. Okay, that started another damn argument. But I have reasons why I say that. I went to a police dog school for the dog master training. So I have some first-hand experience how these dogs are trained over a period of many months. Well, with the army, it's a slightly different way they do it. I think the dog's already trained and then the handler will arrive. More like the European method and also the American method. With us, it's not like that at all. You get a raw dog and you train him while you're on the training yourself. That's how it works. So anyway, what happened then is one of the policemen, might have been me, but I'm not saying it was, just kicked that box. Now that's the last thing you should do. Please don't ever do that. Don't ever start kicking boxes if you think there's explosive devices inside. I kicked that box and it was a magnificent kick. But by that time I was standing alone because the army just went running away. The policemen were running away, but they were pulling their firearms to shoot me. Or being trying to murder them. You know, the funny thing is from law, if they did shoot me that night for attempted murder, they would have gotten away with it. But once again, guys, don't do that. I'm just talking now. But anyway, there were nothing inside the box. We opened it up and there was a device in there to pleasure females with. It starts with a V. I want to say the word here. It's a family, you know. I don't know why that would be said to a national serviceman. Yeah, I don't know. In those years, I've attended quite a few suicides from national servicemen who would shoot themselves. You know what's the sad thing about that? Is whenever we found that body, you had a corporal very, very angry because he's got paperwork now and he's scared it's going to affect his career. But you also find the young man, he's dead now, he shot himself and it's a gruesome sight. Gruesome. But there would always be a letter. And in the letter, he would always apologize to his lieutenant and his corporal and his mates. And you have to wonder about desperation which brought that guy to that. And then you have to remember that the military and the police, which is a military organization, it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. We have to show sympathy. You know, we sometimes look down upon those who ran away or who didn't want to serve or was like the Japoers, things like that. But you know what? It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. And to take a guy for 2 years away from his house, away from his family, to do something he doesn't want to do in a system he doesn't believe in. You know, I actually have admired him for actually arriving. But anyway, so that is the crime scene, working with explosives. We also talk there about stay the hell away from the journalists. They are not trustworthy people. Not one of them. Don't like them. Don't talk to them. Get your attorney involved immediately, even before you speak to the police, because, you know, they can finger you, they can put you in jail. If they can destroy your life, yeah, they will. They will. Especially in a place like the US, you know, which is now ultra insane because of the Gideon dialectics playing off. You know, there will be, the police might say, okay, there's no criminal charges, you acted correctly. Then comes some human rights organization, and I was a human rights attorney myself. Then they will come and sue you in a civil court because, you know, you shot this guy and you did this and you did that, and then you have to sue them back. And it's just a damn nightmare which doesn't end. And that, guys, is the reason why many people will not intervene. They will just walk away and let that crime, that terrorist attack takes place. And then we get to reporting suspicious activity, which is chapter 8. Man, that's a problem because many times people have noticed the change in the attackers. They could see these guys suddenly went overseas to Yemen or one of these places. And they met up with their jihadi mates and they are now totally under their influence. You see, they change the way they speak. They change the way they act towards women. Suddenly now they have a problem with a woman in a bikini top. In the old days, they just had no problem with it at all, they just there. But now they totally against that. They don't even want to be seen with a woman alone. Their dress changes. They suddenly have a mullah type of beards. I'm talking jihadism now, which is really a very small part of the Muslim population. So don't take all Muslims for that. It's also so that there actually is a thing like far right-wing terrorism. There's a lot of that. I do write about it in one of the books. Can't even remember which one. I'll have to think about it. Put it here for you. But anyway, there is such links. So again, I say to you, it's the famous dog which bites the most. Don't think just because a guy looks like a jihadi terrorist that he's one. Remember what I said to you about the difference between fundamentalism and radicalism. It's not the same thing. I speak about it in many books, including Oath of Evil. It's very much worth your while to listen what I have to say there because people tend to judge on appearances. Now, you can do that, of course. And yeah, in fact, you do, because if a guy suddenly starts changing and he becomes very radical in his way of talking, and you can see it, you pick it up on his Facebook everywhere, you can see it. And people do report him, but nothing happens. You know why? You know why nothing happens? Let me tell you why. Because your intelligence services, and that I include your FBI, which is useless, totally politicized. Since the 1990s, these people has come in, they brought their woke and crap with them. The good people left. There's very few of them left now where you can say it's a square jaw G-man. They're not there anymore. They left. And so these people bring their civilian outlooks in life, their liberalism, those things into it. There's no vetting. You can join the CIA or FBI as you please. In the Western intelligence, no vetting, no, not really, no. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're gay or if you're lesbian or if you're radical or you're atheist or it doesn't matter. No, doesn't matter. Shouldn't ask those questions. No. And it doesn't really matter whether you're gay or lesbian or whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Couldn't care less what you are. If you're in your bedroom, man, who cares? But the fact is that when you work in that field, and you work in places which is not as liberal as you might be working at, people are going to look at you with contempt. It's only the West which has changed. It hasn't changed in the rest of the world. And that's the problem. So now you arrive in a theater like Sub-Saharan Africa, or you're in Eastern Europe, or you're out in the East. People will not trust you. They will not speak to you. You will be very ineffective because they don't like that type of thing. I'm sad to break your bubble for you. And this is not homophobic or anything like that. I'm just telling you from a practical viewpoint. It's not acceptable everywhere. But people they don't understand that and they don't care. But anyway, so many times when people are reported, no one acts upon it until it's too late. And then it's like, oh, it was such a surprise. Or mostly the parents, with the 9/11 bombers. Oh, I can't believe my son would have done that. No, you're an idiot. Of course you knew. You knew. You saw it. You saw him changing. But that's a problem now, guys. Even when you report it, they don't listen to you and they don't care. And then with this wokeism where you say, no, you know what, I think that guy, whoa. You can't say that. No, you can't say that. You know what I mean? And so people don't report. So where they report, they are ignored, and where they report, sometimes they're even sued, or they're just dismissed. So you see the problem here. There's a lack of faith, and that's a huge damn problem. anyway, so we deal with specific instances too. There's one specific which I'm dealing with, which is San Bernardino, which was in California on December the 2nd, 2015. I mention that a lot because that is where a guy, Syed Rizwan Farouk, with his wife, Tashfeen Malik, they stormed into a place and they shot 14 people dead and wounded another 21. The place where Farouk was of course working. According to Obama, that was just workplace violence. People remember that. If you cannot identify terrorism, you cannot deal with it. Yeah. Fascinating what happened in those years. Anyway, they had a large amount of ammunition, 12 pipe bombs. They had materials to making even more bombs. And they were armed with assault rifles, and they were busy on social media supporting known terrorist groups. You see, there you go. Their tactics were not great. They simply walked into the place, they started shouting, God is great, in Arabic, and they started shooting. Yeah. But it was actually planned because they locked their Apple phones. They also had homemade bombs everywhere. So they were trying to kill more people, and that's actually where I parted ways with Apple. Now, I've never had an Apple device in my life, couldn't afford it. But my late wife Melissa was a believer in Apple. She was dead by this time. She died in 2014 on the 21st of May. It was yesterday 11 years. It was also yesterday 4 years since we started the Legacy Conversation channel. So I started it on that day exactly for that reason, a new beginning. But I can tell you, even though I'm very happily married to Rebecca these days, and Rebecca's happily married to me, but we both lost ones. You do actually, you remember. On the days of death, days of birthdays, other special days, you do remember. So it's not to say to live in the past, but not at all. But anyway, so the FBI obtained a court order. They went to Apple. They say, guys, can you unlock this phone for us, break it open so we can do our investigations? And that's perfectly standard. That's how you do it. Read OSTM, codename OSTM. I show you how you actually do counter-espionage operations there, how you do it. And yeah, so the FBI said to him, yeah, F you. No, we don't do that. Court order, F your court order too, mate. That's the attitude. That's the attitude. Yeah, it is. 14 people died, 21 are injured. Guy stormed in showing God is great. Yeah. Known to be on Facebook and other places to support these groups. Yeah, it's a terrorist attack. And what does Apple say? F you. We're not going to help you. And your court order. Man, it's amazing. You did that in South Africa. In my time, I arrest you right in your director's office, including your entire board. You will be in jail for contempt of court, and you will stay in that court until you open that phone. No one asked you to open all phones. Specific phone from a terrorist who killed people, Americans, and that's how you treat your fellow Americans. And that's why I said there will be no Apple devices in my house ever, and there will be no Apple formatted books for sale or otherwise under my name or under the assumed name. No, you will not find any such books ever. And you can say to me, oh, well, I'm sure you heard them. No, I didn't. No, I don't care. No, man, that's a big organization, and the book sales are anyway zero, so it doesn't matter. I just like talking about it. Because I feel it can help you, once you read a book like that, or even the other books, and something gets stuck in your mind, in the future it might help you. I know this book has helped a few people in incidents. I know because they wrote to me. But no, that attitude of mine is, I'm not on the illusion. It's not going to assist me to break Apple, not at all. But I can get out the word that that's exactly what they did. And perhaps next time you buy something, you should bloody well think about it. You should think before you do that. And then that's basically the book. I'm just going through here to see if there's anything else which is of interest to you. Not really. I think I covered most of it. The different ammunitions, where to keep your firearm, all those things are there. The .22 rimfire. Yeah, there's not really much. We also deal with U.S. embassies attacks. Now, the U.S. these days, of course, is the second beast of the Bible. So it's acting like the second beast. It looks like a lamb, but in actual fact, it speaks like the dragon. And it's under the influence not of the Jews, not of Israel. They're using Israel actually to create havoc in the Middle East so that Christians can be killed, which is exactly how it played out. I mentioned it in many, many books. No, they're under the influence of the first beast, which is Rome. And Rome is under the influence of a dragon. The dragon is Satan. Yeah, that's what the Bible says. You know, it's fascinating. So you find a lot of security around U.S. embassies. Oh, shame. You know, the problem with that is if people want to report something, let's say you're aware of a terrorist attack is going to take place. Now you try to contact the U.S. embassy, you will never be allowed inside. Ever. Ever. You shouldn't even go to it because it is observed, of course, but let's say for some reason you're trying to contact these people, you won't because you can't, because they're hiding behind their fences and their walls and they are pissed scared. Oh my word, I've never seen more scared people in my life, and I've seen them across Sub-Saharan Africa. Oh my. Oh shame. The places look like forts. But in fact, they are pathetic. If you want to attack them, you can do it. I myself wrote actually the plans on how to take the one in Nigeria in Abuja. I wrote the plans to how to take the one in Pretoria. Yeah. We did an exercise like that in the shadows, just to see how it can be done and how you can counter it. I think they call it not red flag. It's another word where you act as a terrorist as a training exercise. Something red. I speak a lot about it in Codename Phantom. You can read it there. But the point I'm making is these places are totally open for assault with trained troops. Fairly close to normal terrorists, but you know what? You can get a guy in a bar or wherever he's sitting drinking, or you just go to his local girlfriend. Yeah, that's what you do. Or when he picks up his children at school. Yeah, that's where you get it. Or at his house. He's not well protected in his house. Yeah. And of course, we know about all the evacuation plans as well. Yeah. We just got your escape routes. Yeah. Or if you try and take the airport close by because that's what you need to do to come and fetch your people. Yeah, we know how to counter it. It's not to say we want to, but we can. We know how to do it. And I assure you, if we know how to do it, then your enemies will know how to do it too. It's a very bad thing for the embassies to be that closed. But you can understand why, because they do get attacked. Now, what's fascinating is I have an addendum there, which I got from Wikipedia, which is a woke source, but that one's fairly accurate. I checked it. It's outdated now, of course. The book was written 9 years ago, and I'm not that interested in the subject anymore. But a lot of US embassies gets attacked. And the country which attacked them most, we actually burned 2 of them down to the ground with nothing left of it. Yeah. Which one do you think is that? Iran, right? Iran, the big enemy of the US. You know, the one who actually kills Al Qaeda and ISIS, the Shia Muslims who are against the ISIS and Al Qaeda. You know, the people who are Sunni, who are supported by Pakistan, Saudi, Qatar, those people. The Friends of America. Yeah. So you think Iran actually burned down all their embassies? No, they grabbed it. That's true. We remember the embassy siege. Yes. But the country who actually burns down the most US embassies is not Libya. It's not Iran. Pakistan. Yeah. That's where it comes from. Pakistan. Your great mate. You know, Pakistan, your friend. Yeah, the one who you bribed so much so that you could support your problem in Afghanistan before you ran away in disgrace. It's amazing. It's amazing to see the second beast operate. They're a constant source of amusement to me, and I would laugh, actually not bitterly, but I would laugh actually in a nice way if it wasn't so serious, because I have a lot of sympathy for the US. What I see there is fascinatingly bad. Yeah, it's Pakistan who burns you down. You know the place where you hit Bin Laden? Yeah, that place, that place. And yet you spend millions there. Yeah, you help them all the time. In fact, you removed Imran Khan, the cricket player, the prime minister. Yeah, you removed him in a coup a year or two ago. He's still in jail. Don't think he'll ever come out. Fantastic cricket player, by the way. But you don't even know what's cricket, of course. And yeah, you removed him. And guess not, the people now where I understand, I was told most of them are wanted for crimes, the entire cabinet. Wanted for fraud and things. But you installed them. You installed them. So you have to stand over for what you've done. You know, it's like Donald J. Trump. He said, you have to judge people by their friends. Okay, Mr. America, second beast. Tell me about your relationship with those countries who support Al Qaeda and Saudi. Tell me about your relationship with this new fellow in Syria. You know, the one who used to be a former commander at Al Qaeda. The one who actually, I think they said he beheaded Americans. Yeah, definitely killed him. Yeah, that's your friends, mate. It's your friends. Guys, what a wonderful world we live in here in the end times, isn't it? I wish there were no reason for me to write a book like Terrorist Takedown, but I did write it. It's full of examples inside it. It's full of advice. It's full of things which I think you might find interesting, full of history. So if you can get hold of it, it's on Amazon. It is on hardcover, softcover. It's audio as well as Kindle. Never in Apple. Now you know why. Read it. If you think you can benefit by it, then please read it. Because if you go on a holiday to a place like Germany or Europe, your chances of being involved in a terrorist incident is quite good, actually. Yeah. France is still, since 2015, under martial law. Did you know that? Yeah. And the weapons we use these days are machetes and knives and things. So if you see a guy coming at you with a knife, I hope you can defend yourself. UK, full of terrorism. But what do we concentrate on there? Now let me think now. Oh, you forwarded a Facebook message or a WhatsApp message which I think is anti-gay or anti-Israel, and therefore you are a terrorist. Not the actual guy who go and knife people and kill people and explode bombs at concerts. No, we don't worry about that. We worry about you and on Facebook, you know. Oh my word. Oh my word. I feel sorry for you. You live in the UK. Oh man, just leave. It's not worth it. That place has totally gone fascist, and it's not going to change. It was predicted in the Bible. It says the whole world will follow the second beast, and the whole world will follow the second beast. Anyway, guys, that's the story. Terrorist Takedown. Hope you enjoy it. God bless you.